Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a really powerful novel, Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things. It won the Booker Prize, and, well, it's complex.
It really is. Our plan today is to sort of unpack those layers, the history, the society, the personal heartbreak, all woven together.
And Roy herself gives us this incredible framework, doesn't she? This idea that,
Yeah, that a few dozen hours can affect the outcome of whole lifetimes. It's a core idea.
like pieces of a burned clock needing to be resurrected from the ruins and examined.
Exactly. And we're going to look at how that plays out, not just for the characters, but in the wider Indian context she paints.
Okay, so those few dozen hours. How does Roy immediately show us the impact on the main characters, Rahel and Esta?
Well, the book actually starts years later when the twins, Rahel and Esta, reunite. They've been separated for 23 years.
Wow, 23 years. Because of?
Because of these catastrophic events back in their childhood in IM Kerala, their cousin drowns, their mother Amu's secret affair comes out, and her lover, Velutha, is murdered.
So the story begins at the reunion, but it's really about looking back.
Precisely. It's all reconstruction. Roy feeds us these fragments of the past, these crucial hours, and we piece together what happened and why it shattered everything.
And the way she writes, it's not just telling a sad story.
Yeah.
The language itself is stunning.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of why it won the Booker. She uses such rich detail, even in tragedy.
Those ordinary things you mentioned, can you give an example of how she does that?
Sure. Like, describing lilies curling up at a funeral, or a tiny baby bat found on someone's sari, or even tears falling like raindrops. It makes the emotions so visceral, so grounded in the physical world, you know?
Yeah, it anchors the big emotions in small, unforgettable images. Okay, so these personal tragedies, they aren't happening in isolation. Roy really digs into India's social fabric, especially the caste system.
Right, and that's crucial context. The caste system is this ancient social hierarchy, basically classifying people by birth.
And even though it was officially abolished,
Exactly. Constitutionally abolished in 1950, but its influence on everyday life, particularly in places like Kerala back then, was still incredibly powerful. It created deep divisions and marginalized lower castes, the so-called untouchables.
which brings us to the love laws, this term Roy uses. It sounds ominous.
It is. It refers to the unwritten but rigidly enforced rules about who can love who can cross those social boundaries.
And this is central to the tragedy with Velutha, right? He's from
Yeah.
an untouchable caste.
Yes. He works at the family's pickle factory. And he and Amu, the twins' mother, who's from a higher caste, have this forbidden affair.
Violating those love laws.
Profoundly. And Roy shows how the consequences aren't just immediate punishment, but how that transgression, that broken rule, poisons everything. It lingers forever in ordinary things.
Like coat hangers and tar, things you wouldn't even notice normally.
Those mundane things become reminders of the tragedy, of the broken rules, of the loss. It's incredibly powerful.
So we see the personal pain, the restrictive social rules. How does the bigger political picture fit in? Amu's struggles, Velutha's situation.
Well, Roy connects it all. Amu isn't just heartbroken. She's a divorced woman in a society that judges her, feeling trapped. Velutha isn't just having an affair. He's also involved in a nascent communist movement, balancing that risk with his job and his relationship.
And there's the backdrop of national policy too, right? The Green Revolution.
Yes, exactly. In the 60s, Indira Gandhi's government pushed policies for high-yield crops, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, damming rivers.
Which sounds potentially good.
Yeah.
Fighting famine.
It did help stave off famine in some ways, but it had a huge downside. It displaced countless people, especially lower castes, from their land, and the environmental damage was immense.
Okay, so progress for some meant disaster for others.
Pretty much. And Roy shows the long-term scars. When the twins return as adults, the river they knew isn't bursting with life anymore.
He greets them with a ghastly skull smile.
Yes.
Haunting.
It is. It perfectly captures how the personal return is shadowed by this larger national ecological tragedy. It shows how people are products of their time and place.
It really drives home that quote you mentioned earlier about personal despair versus the nation's turmoil.
Right. That personal despair could never be desperate enough compared to the vast, violent, circling public turmoil of a nation. Individual lives are just caught in these huge currents.
So the God of Small Things really reveals how these big forces, social structures, history, politics, shape individual destinies in ways we might not even see.
Absolutely. The love laws, the green revolutions, they aren't just plot points. They represent these larger systems that dictate lives.
Which leaves us with a question for you listening. What might be the less visible love laws or green revolutions operating in our world today?
Yeah, how might subtle societal rules or big systemic changes be shaping your own few dozen hours, your own life's path? What ordinary things around you, if you look closely, might actually hold traces of those larger forces? Something to think about.